presentation.
So Connor, are you telling me that you would die over a shilling?
Shit. I just watched this. You're out of me such a sharp noob already. What was the response? It was very witty.
It's what I signed up for.
It's what I signed up for. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's just try that again.
So Connor, are you telling me that you'd be willing to die for a shilling?
That's what I signed up for. See, I can bring a little bit of authenticity to it.
Yes, one of my favorite things is the Irish brogue pronouncing different landmarks in Spain. Brian Cox, Tara Castro. Yeah, okay. In case anybody was surprised and didn't read the title of the episode, we are covering the first in a weirdly long series of movies. Really, it was billed as an ITV TV series, but they're all feature length, and there's 16 of them.
British TV is so strange.
Yes, we are covering Sharpe's Rifles, which is the movie that the series that I would say arguably launched Sean Bean's career. At least put him on the map for other people to be able to cast him as characters that die in things.
Well, and cast him as a leading man, which he would come to America and never do that.
No, which is a little... we were talking about that earlier of just why he didn't hit the heights that he otherwise, I feel like, could, because he's got the charisma for it, I feel like.
Yeah. I think part of it is when your first breakout role in America as a British man is a villain.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the where they stick you, you know? It's really tough to make that hero to villain crossover. If you're specifically if you're coming from the UK.
Yeah.
And you're a man.
Yeah. And so this whole series predates pretty much anything that you would, if you were born in America and you were introduced to Sean Bean, this is before anything that you would have otherwise noted him in. Yeah. So like before GoldenEye, this is before Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, well before Game of Thrones.
Way before Game of Thrones.
Although there's one of the later additions to the series does get shot maybe a couple of years prior to Game of Thrones, and it's a little too late for Sean Bean to be playing that particular type of character. So the whole idea of us talking about this kind of came from initially in my YouTube feed. I just kept getting clips from this show from the 90s that had Sean Bean as a Napoleonic rifleman in it, and just the most British Napoleonic War things happening in scenes, but it wasn't not in like a war scene sense, but in like a officers talking to each other in rooms and dressing each other down type of thing.
It's not even a witty repartee either. No. It's so matter of fact, but it's also like really well-trained British actors doing the really well-trained British actor thing.
Yeah, which is something that you do, I think, when you have a middle to low budget series and you can't do big battle scenes.
Yeah.
So you're just like, well, we got to make the most of it by putting all these guys just in a room to talk for like a good 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point I was getting very curious about it, and then I was telling you about it, and you were starting to see some of it and show up in your feed.
I'm pretty sure it happened at the exact same time.
Yeah. And
this is deep pandemic
Yeah.
sort of post lockdown, but like I'm still living in my parents. No, it's actually, it might have even been during lockdown for me.
Yeah.
But I'm still like, I'm living in my parents' basement, spending a lot of time on YouTube. This thing pops up for me, and I can tell you the scene that that popped up for me if we want to get into that in the origin stories. But did I send you one of the clips and being
At
like,
some
this
point,
is a
yeah.
Matt thing? Yes.
Oh yeah. It hits a significant chunk of the things that interest me. Is like, it's a series about people who are in a structured military format, but like it's not about the war and the killing stuff. It's just about like how people operate in systems, and generally how certain people are just more competent than others in those systems, and getting a little bit of showing why it's important to be good at your job, like outside of shooting people, just like good at leading people, good at, just like strategizing broad plans. And then working in an environment, especially when we're talking about like Napoleonic era Europe, where you could literally be rich and buy a commission as an officer to run a group of people, where it's just like, oh yeah, that's not how any of that works. But if you've worked in the financial sector, it's not too far removed from what we're dealing with today. So then finally, I think it was after almost 3 years, I finally caught COVID for New Year's coming into this year. And I was like, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity. So I watched literally every single Sharpe movie from start to finish in like a week while I was recovering from COVID. And I fell in love with it.
And we counted, there's how many in the series?
There are 16 feature-length episodes, which they're movies.
Yeah, they're movies.
They're movies. Every single one is its own isolated story.
Are they all based off individual novels or?
Yes.
Okay.
They're all based off of, so the Sharpe series itself was written by Bernard Cornwell, who some people know from this series, writing this series. Other people, if you're around our age, the other thing that he was kind of famous for in youth fiction was writing the Redwall series, which is like anthropomorphic animals fight wars. So like fighting wars is definitely his thing.
He's a big war guy?
Yeah. As we were discussing, he also does one called the Starbuck Chronicles about a guy who fights for the Confederate Army in the American Civil War, but
written by a British guy?
Yeah, written by a British guy.
Yep. Cool. That always works out well.
Yeah. So that one I have little to no interest in trying to read up on.
Oh, way down south in the land of traders, rattlesnakes and alligators. Right away, come away, right away, come away. Where cotton's king and men are chattels, Union boys will win the battles. Right away, come away, right away, come away.
But Sharpe, as far as I'm aware, in England was a fairly big deal, and then somehow never really made its way across the pond, except by virtue of the fact that people noticed that Sean Bean was kind of good as an actor.
I did vaguely recognize it from like the public radio catalogs that we would get of like, you could buy this box set of this British television show. Matt, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, because this is not a super popular show on this side of the pond, I want to take a moment. Can you just tell me and the audience, what is Sharpe?
Sharpe is a series about the character Richard Sharpe, who was essentially underclass English, joins as a regular in the army during the Napoleonic War, and then in the first story of the series, saves, before he becomes Lord Wellington's life, and gets promoted as an officer in a rifle regiment.
From sergeant to lieutenant.
Yes. And so the series essentially covers his adventures and struggles as he tries to lead this regiment throughout the Napoleonic War over the course of like 10 years. And all of the weird socio-political shit that happens in between. Because like one of the biggest things is at this era, we talked about like how if you were rich enough, you could buy a commission. Sharpe is not a gentleman. and he gets raised to the rank of a gentleman, and that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. So he becomes kind of like a guy who's breaking a lot of standard traditions, especially in the British Army, and has to deal with the adversity that comes with that. So more than anything else, like it is technically like a war series, but it's less so about the war part of everything and more about just like how shitty certain people can just be in any sort of situation. I think, and ultimately, to me, it is still an anti-war series because it is just like war is stupid and shitty, and everyone involved gets their hands dirty, and it's difficult sometimes to figure out what good, if anything, comes of it.
Yeah, I have not watched the whole series yet. Spoiler alert for our audience: this is the beginning of a series of me watching every episode of the Sharpe series.
We may drag some of our compatriots in certain episodes because
you may hear a familiar voice or two down the line.
Oh yes.
So we have Sharpe, the story of Sergeant Sharpe making his way up the ranks of the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars. Starts off as a novel, right?
Yep.
In the 80s, a series of novels.
Yep.
And then checks notes, 1993, they adapt the first of those novels into the first film in this film series.
Yeah.
And then that continues. I mean, they made
the last one like 2008.
Right, but they took a break in there, right?
Yeah. The initial run, I think, which was 14 of them, was like 1993, 94 until like 99, something like that.
Oh wow, they went that long.
So
which I guess is like
So they shot for several straight years, just which we were talking about in Crimea, back when it was cool to do so. And just the focus of most of the Sharpe series is it takes place, if you're not familiar with the Napoleonic Wars, the British in French-occupied Spain while they're trying to help liberate Spain from Napoleon's brother, who he's put on the throne.
Right.
So, and the last couple of episodes deal with them actually pushing into France, but like most of it is the Spanish campaign or the Peninsula War or Peninsula Campaign. I forget how they term it, but
gotcha.
That's the bulk of the Sharpe story.
Gotcha. And I imagine it's also stuff that like an average British person watching this series would know more about than us. Yeah.
Because we like technically our War of 1812 is a little splinter of the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because the English were fighting the French, and they kept and we were friendlier with the French.
Oh, okay.
So the English would continuously like seize ships and press Americans into service in the Royal Navy, and we were taking umbrage to that, and eventually we're like, hey, fuck you. And then it turned into its own branch out war.
It's an oversimplification of events, but yes.
But most early American wars tend to be branch off tributary wars that are actually started in Europe.
Of things going on in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so generally speaking, but most of it takes place in Spain. He falls in love in Spain. He goes through all of these adventures with his best buddy that he meets in the first episode, Patrick Michael Harper, which we already said is like the most Catholic name, the most Irish Catholic name. Yes, played by the inimitable Dara O'Malley.
So great.
Yeah, him and Sean Bean are like the best buddy cop. Like the towards the end, like I said, when they came back to do a couple of the ones like in the later aughties, and everybody's very old. I was watching it, but still enjoying it for like the Lethal Weapon 3 vibes of it all, where it's like, you guys shouldn't be doing this, but it's fun. Like I'm sure you're having fun. God bless you. Nobody's going to believe that you're all like 35. It's fine.
Right. Harper was saying he was too old for this shit 2 movies ago.
Oh,
and
God.
Yet here they are still doing it.
Yeah. And I think both of those movies take place in India. After the Napoleonic Wars, so that comes with its own set of problematicness, as we were discussing with the last episode. But yeah, but yeah, no, I really fell in love with this series. Like you were saying, it's kind of like tailor made to.
It's like it was designed in a lab for you to love. It's military people doing, again, like you said, like not doing the fighting stuff, just doing the things that you have to do when you're organizing a big effort.
Yeah. All the logistics.
People that are very good at their jobs, a term that we've lovingly labeled competency porn.
Oh yeah.
And also people playing live music on screen.
Oh yeah.
And occasionally a sea shanty.
Yeah, there's a lot of folk music in this. So the I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who plays Hagman throughout most of the series actually is one of the ones who sings a lot of the soundtrack music, and throughout the series, like any shanty or any sort of like soldier song that they're singing is something that Hagman sings, and it ends up on the soundtrack. But like, as far as like Sharpe's rifles specifically goes, I almost got turned off to the series when I first started to watch it, because like the first, I don't know, like hour is everyone hates everyone and no one knows what they're doing, like to get anywhere. So there was this hot second where I was like, I don't know, like I know I saw all the clips that I was really a fan of, but I don't know if this is going to work for me.
Yeah, no, I had the same experience. I watched this before I moved to Jersey City, so probably over like last summer.
Yeah.
With my dad, thinking like, the thing we can bond over. He likes a war movie.
Yeah.
And the scene that I had seen from Sharpe that made me fall in love with the whole thing is the Major Lennox conversation.
Yes.
That's coming up in the next episode.
Yes, when we cover Sharpe's Eagle is the Major Lennox clip, and if you Google or if you go on YouTube and search Major Lennox, you'll see it.
I might play a little bit right now.
Major Hogan leaves the worst to the last. He says you lost the king's colours.
The fault was not mine, sir. Major Lennox must answer. Major Lennox answer with his life, as you should have done if you had any sense of honor. You lost the colours of the King of England. You disgraced us, sir. You shamed us, sir. You will answer.
I am making you a battalion of detachments you will fetch and carry. The Light Company put up a fight, so I will let it stand under the command of a new captain.
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Gibbons?
To be commanded by the newly gazetted Captain Sharpe, sir.
So I was watching with my dad, and sort of waiting for the energy of the Major Lennox speech from the next episode to come in.
Yeah.
Kind of at any point. Because even like the guy, the fellow who plays Wellington, whose name I don't know.
Who only does it for the first couple of movies. Yeah.
But he's in it, like it was the same face.
Oh yeah.
And Brian Cox plays, I forget his name.
It's Major
Hogan.
Major Hogan, yeah. Which is another like just Brian Cox is in this, by the way. Like
yeah, exactly. Like it is British television, so every British actor has to be in it at some point.
Yeah.
And so he plays this like hilarious spy master who's like, we'll talk about him a little bit later. But so I was kind of waiting for that moment to happen.
Yeah,
and it just kind of didn't. And it, like you said, it was like about a bunch of people that like don't really like each other going off to do a thing that none of them really understand what's going on. It goes pretty poorly, and on this viewing, I finally got it, where it's like it's about all of them coming together to be good at this whole fighting a war thing.
Yeah.
And Sharpe learning how to become a leader.
Yes,
and
very much so.
And keep his men together in a way that, that sort of flows through the rest of the show, but like he has to go through the process of learning how to do that. So I found it a bit dull the first time watching it through, but this time, I mean, it helps that you're here, but like, I was thoroughly entertained the whole way through.
Yeah.
It
helps to know, I think, to a point where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
Cause like you at least know where the mission's going a little bit. You know that Sharpe and Harper are going to become best buddies.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps stave off a little bit of the like, oh, they're really being shitty to each other. Like they literally tried to kill each other in the first scene where they meet.
Yeah.
And then like Harper spends several scenes after the fact plotting to murder Sharpe.
Menacingly playing his little whistle in the shadows.
Yeah.
In that one scene, just staring at him.
Yeah. And so it I think knowing where it's going to end up, you're like, okay, I mean, it's fine. Like they have their whatever the male version of a meet cute is, where it's like they start off as guys giving each other shit and then become the best of friends by the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they share a look when Sharpe gives Harper his sergeant.
Oh, the sergeant stripes?
The sergeant stripes, where it looks like they're just going to kiss.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Which I'm here for.
Yeah. And then that's it. The whole course of the series is just the romance between the two of them. Because like all of the female romantic interests for the both of them throughout the entire series are there, and there's some plots regarding it, but like the relationship between Sharpe and Harper always supersedes that.
Yeah.
Like Sharpe is happily living alone. I think like in later things after the war, Sharpe is like living on a farm happily with his wife, but then fucking he finds out that Harper is missing in India, and he's like, well, I have to go to India. It's like, no, you don't.
There are other younger men that can do that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's shit like that where it's like, okay, I know where this is going, but it makes it a little bit better. But it's easier to see the arc of where everybody starts to where everybody ends up, especially in the first movie. So you're like, okay, I can see why we want to start here and then get there. But I also understand if, like, I feel like when we were talking about introducing any of our colleagues to this, that we may start with the next movie just to be like, it's a buddy cop show. Like, just pretend it's a buddy cop show. It just happens to be in the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars. Like, just and that's the lens with which you view this.
Yeah.
Fall in, Rifleman Harper.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Wait. Do you not wish your officer to give you some high honors?
That's what he did. He told me to fall in.
Speaking of the arc of the episode, would you care to, or I can, talk about sort of the overarching plot of this particular episode of the show?
Yeah, so we start off, the first sequence is Sharpe saving Wellington from not French assassins, just French cavalry guys who caught Wellington like alone with his dog.
What the fuck was he doing in that field completely by himself?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
So then there's the infamous scene of like he saves Wellington. Wellington's like, you did me a good turn, so I'm going to do you a damn bad one. I'm promoting you to lieutenant. So then as his first detail, Sharpe is assigned to a small group of sharpshooters under a captain that are going to be trying to find a member of the Rothschild family. The reason being is that the Rothschilds can loan money to the British Army so that they can pay their soldiers. As of this point, I think they've gone a month without pay, and it's going to turn into 2 months soon, and then they're going to really have a problem.
Actually, I think it was 2 months out without pay, about to be a third.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So
something pretty serious.
So they have to go and search because the Rothschilds have gone missing on their way. So they have to go into French-occupied France and find them. The whole regiment gets why did I just
massacred?
Massacred, yeah, but what's the term for when they ambushed?
Oh, ambushed, yeah.
The whole rifles regiment gets ambushed. The only guys that are left are the riflemen. And Sharpe, at first, being new to command and thinking he has to beat these guys in order to get them to follow him anywhere, is just like dragging them along to say, we have to get to this place to find the guys. They run into the Spanish guerrillas who are working with the British. And they're like, hey, we're also going in the same direction as you. Let's join up and we'll get everywhere we need to go safely. Great.
And the background of that being, at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, you gave me a little bit of a history lesson.
Yeah.
Napoleon had installed his brother as the king of
quote unquote king of Spain, but he's a French puppet.
Right.
Yeah.
Which sort of split the powerful element in Spain in two camps, the ones that sided with the French and the ones that sided with the Spanish royalty, which were
His Most Catholic Majesty Ferdinand VII.
indeed very important to the Spanish to lean on, to point that out.
Oh yes.
And Ferdinand was elsewhere. He was sort of ruling from afar.
Yeah, I forget. I at some point knew where he was hanging out, but long and short is that there was still a group of people who were loyal to him who were trying to liberate Spain from the French puppet king.
Right. And in a very European case of the enemy is of my enemy is my friend.
Yes.
The Spanish royalty had allied with the British to, defeat Napoleon, and
yes,
these are those guerrillas are the guerrillas that Sharpe runs into are with the royalist side.
Yes, and that's where he meets our first love interest, Teresa. There's going to be a little bit of bad Yorkshire accents throughout, just because it's hard to not.
It's hard to not do it. And
there's a 90-second compilation of every time Sean Bean throughout, like I think the first couple of movies, says the word busted.
Move, you bastards!
You fat bastard.
You little bit of a Dutch bastard!
Bernard Cornwell initially, when he was writing the character, didn't necessarily set a place that Sharpe had been born in, but after Sean Bean started to portray him, Bernard Cornwell was like, yeah, he's from Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Just like that's the only voice I ever hear in my head.
Yeah, well, and you can't separate Sean Bean from that Yorkshire
God,
accent.
No, not even when he's playing literal fantasy characters. So he meets up with Teresa and with another a Spanish major who's a count, and they are working their way to the final destination is what is it? Torre Castro. Depending on how all of them pronounce it, it really is difficult to figure it out.
Yeah.
Torre Castro.
Over the course of the time, we find out that the Spanish are carrying this chest. They're claiming it's papers. We don't know what it is. And Sharpe is, of course, wary of this. And over the course of this trip, Harper is kind of feeding him little like, hey, something doesn't smell right. And Sharpe doesn't trust him because Harper was trying to kill him for the last half hour.
Right.
And eventually we get to one city where the French have already like massacred the town. And we find a group of Methodists just happen to be there. But the entire thing was a ruse so that they could get to the chest. And that's when Harper finds his redemption, because he's been essentially arrested for mutiny. He's going to be shot whenever they get home, and is tied to the chest. And one of the Spanish one of the French allied spies is trying to get him to give up the chest, and offers him all sorts of, like, he has a bag of like gold money that he can offer him. And Harper, to his credit, stays the course and decides that he is going to guard this chest with his life, to the call and response of that he is owed a shilling from the king because he hasn't been paid in 2 months.
Yeah, the French spy offers to secure him passage to America, and he says something like that.
That'd be nice. But you see, the King of England owes me last month's wages, and there's no way I could rest easy in America knowing that bastard owed me a shilling.
Which is a very, I mean, I didn't grow up Irish, but I grew up Catholic. So like I get debt. And owing things and all that sort of stuff.
Not only that, but if the history of Irish people being poorly treated by
oh my god,
the English royalty or British royalty is long and storied and
frankly sad
and very, very sad. And I even something as petty as a single shilling or guinea being owed by the king to an Irishman would be, especially at that time, shortly about 20, 30 years before the potato famine started.
Yeah.
Would be just enough of an excuse to be petty.
Yep.
And
so Harper does the most badass thing in the entire film.
So fucking cool. Harper's so fucking cool.
So the scene is that the French guy, because of course he's too much of a toff to actually try to kill Harper himself, he tells these two French cavalrymen to go charge Harper, who's on foot. And he's like, well, Harper's only got one shot. One of you is going to die, but the other one will kill him. So have at it.
Yeah.
In the most like villainous way possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's just oozing scum and villainy.
Yes. So,
and also he says whoever kills him gets like this like bag of
the
gold.
money that he was going to offer Harper originally. And so the one guy charges, he of course gets shot, but then the second guy starts to come at him with on horse with his sword. And what Harper does is he puts the ramrod into a gunpowder loaded rifle and then just fires it into the guy's neck. Because that's the world that we live in.
Yeah. And then shoots the spy's hat off.
Yes.
Because just as a cherry on top of that delicious sundae of death.
Yes. So that, of course, redeems Harper. It is the moment that Sharpe falls in love with Harper.
His shit-eating grin when he's sitting on that hill. And
With the hat.
With the hat on, as they all run back after they realize that they've been duped, is one of the happiest... It is as happy as I think I could get watching this particular episode.
Oh yeah, and it speaks to the core of Harper's character of he, regardless of whatever else is going on, is truly a man of his word.
Mm-hmm.
And if he means to do something, he does it. And the fact that he signed up to fight for King George, like that means like his word is his bond, and like he will do what he does. And the fact that he can execute that successfully makes him happier than shit.
Yeah, you also get the sense, and this is more through like through the text than through context, but you get the sense that he really does love this life in the army. Despite how hard and unpleasant it seems.
That's I mean, like that's the thing that I think a lot of. And I'm generalizing, but I feel like a lot of young men, and I include myself in this group, would romanticize of the Band of Brothers type stuff of regardless of the fact that you were in the shit with people, you are with a group of people where you're just like kind of, by virtue of necessity, you become comrades and brothers in arms. Mm-hmm. And I understand the predilection to want to join a group that offers that with all and not necessarily understanding the scope of what that means. Yeah.
And you also got to imagine that like wherever all of these guys came from before they joined the army, and as hard as a life in the army is, army life might be marginally better.
You get 3 hots and a cot.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well, not these guys.
Not these guys. These guys, no. They get like crackers and
they get hardtack.
Yeah. Occasionally they get some hay to sleep in.
Yeah. But they're not in prison.
And
they're not in a workhouse.
Yeah.
Which I mean that the story that was always told to me when I was about my grandparents. So all of my dad's his dad and all of his brothers fought in World War II, but they joined up during the Depression, and they joined up mostly because they knew they were going to get a regular meal.
Yep.
And so I understand this somewhat. Like, yes, you are faced in life and death situations every day, but when you're not, there are certain stable assurances that come with that, and so then and you do sometimes forge very deep friendships with certain people.
Yeah.
So that I understand. But the other thing that I will give credit to the Sharpe series is that they also show the other side of it, where it's just like, oh, people get sent to die because somebody wants them to.
Yeah.
And just like for stupid reasons. Like as we were talking about, the plot of this is that ultimately they finally get to the final place. And we realize that what is in the chest is a flag with the St. James cross on it, because St. James is the patron saint of Spain. The Spanish guerrillas' whole play is because of a legend, if they put this flag in the monastery at Torrecastro, they will move the Spanish people to rise up against Napoleon. To which, and if I in Sharpe's place, I would have the same response. No.
That is an insane thing to think and say and risk people's lives for.
Yeah. And that's when Sharpe realizes like his men are fighting and dying And there's an entire conversation towards that scene when he finds out what's going on of just like his men are going to be fighting and dying literally for a flag this time. Not even in the metaphorical sense of dying for a flag.
Yeah.
Literally a specific physical flag that they need to raise in a monastery because of a belief system that you really have to have faith in order to believe that it's actually going to work.
Completely alien to Sharpe.
Yes. Because, I mean, and that's one of those splits between the gentleman leader officers and the guys that are in the mud. Of most of these, the non-commissioned officers and Sharpe themselves, he says, his mother was a prostitute. He never knew his father. He grew up in the slums of Yorkshire and didn't know anything but fighting and dying for scraps of food, and joined the military solely because at least there was some sort of structure there. And that's what he knows, is the practicality of the war machine. And all the guys above him are just like, look, honor and duty and whatever. He's like, who gives a shit? Like,
Yeah.
And that, I think that presents itself through most of the episodes in the series.
You picked us up and we marched with you. Fought for you. And for what? For a stupid superstition. For a rag in a bag.
Not a rag, but the last flag off Spain.
Be damned to you and your rag, sir.
Because he is ordered to do so, and because he is a man who does follow orders, they march into town. They manage to fight through all the French garrison and raise the flag, and everybody cheers and stuff. But they also find the Rothschilds because they were in the carriage that was in that massacred town a few miles back.
Yep. And also, like, Sharpe does undertake this mission because Brian Cox shows up from the shadows and tells him to go do it.
Yeah. He literally, like, Brian Cox, he initially tells Sharpe that he is going to be ahead of them and scouting out stuff and meeting up with people. And it becomes prevalent, like, about halfway through the movie, that Brian Cox is just following Sharpe.
Yep.
And then just kind of shows up out of the shadows after Sharpe's like, I'm not dying for a flag. To which he sets himself up for Brian Cox's response of, like, you already do. Like, yeah, you're getting paid, but, like,
what's the difference?
Yeah. Like, you made poor Perkins carry the regiment colors this whole fucking way injured. Like, clearly you care a little bit about certain flags.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you sort of landed on that the dynamic between the officers and the regular enlisted men, because a big theme, especially of Sharpe's rifles, the movie we're talking about.
Yes.
And I imagine a theme that'll get carried on as we go is that Sharpe is risen from the ranks.
Yes.
Typically people of, like, officer, like, so lieutenant and above, like you said, like, they either went to school or they bought their commissions. Which is
it's a weird, insane concept that only really existed for this period of time, where if you were, and I forget whether this extended to other nations' armies, but specifically for the British Army, if you were wealthy enough, you could buy your commission and become the colonel of a regiment and essentially play chess with human lives.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was. But because of the system that everybody was raised and trained through, even the guys that are in the ranks have this mentality of, like, you have to be a gentleman in order to be an officer and a leader. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point in following you.
Right.
And today, the modern absurdity of that.
Right. Yeah.
But that also comes into play later on. Like the Major Lennox scene we were talking about earlier is between Lord Wellington and an officer who has bought his commission and in turn a regiment.
Yeah.
And has no fighting experience.
Right. And my what I'm gathering is if you're wealthy enough to buy a commission, you're also some sort of peer. You're some sort of lord or lady, or not lady, obviously, but like some sort of lord or whatever. I don't even know what the other terms are in British peerage, but we had also been discussing while we were watching the movie this sort of, like, idea that, like, this is sort of the beginning of the tail end of feudalism, but feudalism is still going on. So there is sort of so in this world, like, playing chess with people's lives, you still sort of have the idea that, these officers kind of almost own their soldiers. And those lives are, theirs to
do with what they please.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the soldier's job as he is trained is like, you're just going to stand there while guys shoot at you, and then you're going to take your turn to shoot back.
Yeah. Well, and the tension that Sharpe is living with is like he is a lieutenant in the army now.
Yeah.
But he's not anywhere near a lord or anything like that. What do they call that?
I mean, being a lord, any type of peerage is kind of the.
But he's certainly not of the officer class.
Oh God, no.
And so he's lacking the education that a lot of these guys get. Being from that sort of like raised, lofty position to have the respect that sort of commands almost on demand, and especially in Great Britain at this time.
Yeah.
Because those class lines were very well drawn and very well maintained and regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great scene right after he gets promoted to lieutenant where he's going in to talk. It's not even a scene; it's just a moment where he's going in to talk to Wellington, and one of the other officers trips him, sort of kicks his feet out from under him as he's going into the office, and like. In the boarding school that guy went to, a guy gets tripped, falls over, and is embarrassed, and everybody laughs at him.
Yeah.
In the world that Sharpe comes from, he almost kicks the shit out of that guy until people stop him.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden he's been elevated to the same level as that guy.
Yeah.
I love the way that they play with that and how overwhelmed he is for almost all of the movie with that.
And it takes him. I think the initial thing is is listening to Teresa's sort of pseudo advice once they start to meet of just like she understands how to lead people, and she kind of like starts giving him little hints of like, hey, have you tried like maybe getting to know the guys that are under your command, or like listening to literally anything that they have to say? Like, and she says there's a scene where she's like, I am the final word on what's going on, but like, I'm going to listen to what these guys have to say because we're all in it together, frankly.
Yeah.
Like we're all stuck on this stupid thing together.
I listen, but I don't always do it, I think she says.
Yeah. Well, and it's the line she says,
you see, we have 2 ears, but only one mouth. So a good leader will listen twice as much as he shouts.
Feeding him little tidbits of like him figuring out how to actually lead this group of sharpshooters and earn their respect ultimately.
Yeah. And also, I mean, there's also the lessons he learned from that colonel that appears to die.
Oh, the captain?
The captain, excuse me,
yeah.
the captain. Yeah, the captain of the regiment that that was ambushed. We don't really meet him before he gets.
He shows up. So when Sharpe is promoted to lieutenant, he's assigned to this platoon of sharpshooters, but the platoon is actually led by this captain that we only really meet during his death scene.
Yeah. Which when I first watched this movie, like that death scene felt like it went on and on and on and on and on. And watching it again, it kind of does that, but also it's really, really well done. It's really well acted. It's really well written. Knowing more about the world that these guys are in, especially, really helped because like understanding the dynamic, because, coming from my perspective as somebody that knows the Napoleonic Wars happened and that's about it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand. I was learning about the dynamics of the British Army at this time, as the movie went on. So the advice that he was giving him about being a leader just kind of went entirely over my head. But watching it again with more understanding, that scene at the end of that scene where the captain gives Sharpe his sword,
right,
and Sharpe says, "You're giving me this so like the men will respect me, right? And he says,
No, they'll think I liked you.
Yeah.
and then dies.
And then dies.
The second half of that sentence is, I don't even know you, man.
Yeah.
But like, again, another aspect of that scene that I like about that scene and also like about Sharpe as a whole is like everybody's on the same page pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, like there is no, I fucking work here moment.
No.
Like they both know what their mission is. They both know the dynamics of what's going on. They both know the people that are at play.
Yeah.
And they just talk to each other like two people that are on the same footing that way.
Yeah.
And there's something really lovely and entertaining about that.
Yeah, well, I think, and there is exposition throughout the film, but the way that you pick up more from watching characters interact with each other in just a more regular basis than you do from like the initial briefing scene in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, I mean, I probably have said this in every episode of every movie that I've liked that we've done a show for, but like they don't do that anymore, Connor.
Yeah.
So like there's the idea of having to pay attention to the movie and watching these characters interact with each other and picking up what's going on just by virtue of observing behavior.
Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, most perfectly exemplified in the I can read scene.
Oh, I love that scene.
Like, so
set that one up.
Yeah. So Sharpe is meeting his men for the first time. He has them all lined up. He's going down, learning their names.
What's your history? How did you end up in this? Yeah.
Yeah. What's your background? How did you end up in the army? And like, what can you do? Like, what's your special ability? And there's one guy named Harris who gets dressed down.
He's dressing down everybody because this is the period of time where he's just giving everybody shit. So that's something to keep in mind as he's going down the line.
Well, Harris, from Wheatley in Oxfordshire.
And previously?
A courtier to my Lord Bacchus and an unremitting debtor.
You're a rake and a wastrel, Harris. Is there anything you can do?
I can read, sir.
Silent, like period, the end of statement. And they cut to this. First of all, it's completely still, and they cut to this reverse shot of Sharpe getting knocked the fuck off his high horse.
Yeah. But non-verbally.
Non-verbally. Yeah, no, exactly. It's like you all that really happens is like Sean Bean's face falls a little bit, and like maybe his head tilts a little bit. But so much is communicated about about what just happened in the dynamic of those two people. Sharpe's backstory, a little bit more about Sharpe's backstory, and also how Sharpe feels about himself, about the stuff that he's self-conscious about.
Oh yeah.
And like Harris finds the weakness in Sharpe's armor like that.
Oh yeah.
And all this, and without saying a word, the dynamics of what's going on between those two men are settled. Like, like end of story. Like the scene has occurred. There has been a full arc in the scene.
Yeah.
And now we move on.
And it's all of the separate ideas and thoughts of like everything that is unsaid in the scene that gets conveyed without anybody having to actually say it out loud.
Yeah.
Is like, that's the art of how you're supposed to visually tell a story, at least from my book. But
that's cinema.
Yeah. It's like we don't need the exposition. We've had an interaction that actually like sets everything up for us, and it doesn't have to. It's literally
Yeah, we don't need to cut to Sean Bean by a fire with a book, trying to sound out words.
Oh no. Oh God!
Which a lesser film would have done.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Anyway, yeah, no. So like it's the whole movie is sequences like that, and you do really kind of have to pay attention to the interactions between characters to ultimately learn what the dynamics are and what the ultimate themes are. But the general theme of this particular film in the series is you've risen above your station, learning to become comfortable with that, but learning to earn that position is maybe too strong of a word, but in a way that other people will still respect you for it, even though you didn't come by it conventionally.
Yes.
And so like it's him learning to become a leader. It's him learning to be okay with being a leader. And it takes a little bit of time, which is why I usually like when I talk to other people, it's like, if you're looking for just like the shit that you're seeing the clips for on YouTube, start with the second one because the characters are already built. Like it's not, whatever. But this is truly like a little bit of an origin story for Sharpe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't mind. This is not my favorite of the group.
Yeah. It may not be what you go to Sharpe for.
Yeah.
But it isn't. But what I am learning this time watching it is that it is an important thing to have seen, I think.
Yeah, because it informs you about the character. It primes you for the dynamics of this group of sharpshooters that we're stuck with most of them throughout the series.
Yeah.
So like it helps you, it primes the pump for all of that.
Yeah. Sharpe is in command of a platoon, not a platoon, but like a fire team almost.
Yeah.
Division.
I am when it comes to the separations of military groups, I'm a little foggy, but like
he's in charge of a group of like 6 guys.
Yeah.
And they're all sharpshooters.
They're all chosen men.
Which the chosen men concept, I might have missed that. What is the chosen man?
Chosen man is it being like you are especially. It's essentially the mark of a sharpshooter of like you are specifically chosen for this job because you are better than everybody else at this job.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's where they all wear a specific band on their uniform that indicates they are a chosen man because it's the Napoleonic Wars, so everybody's uniform has all of the shit that they've done over the course of their military career.
Yeah. Well, and these guys are a little bit separate because they wear these green uniforms, which I imagine is sort of like early attempted camouflage.
Yeah, it's the idea of so riflemen as a concept, especially during this war. Reading into it, it was something that the French army specifically never really adopted, but the British had rifle regiments. And so we're getting into gun geek territory.
Right,
so
as opposed to like what you think of like Revolutionary War style
muskets.
Yeah. Smooth bore muskets that are very inaccurate, but reliable enough that you can get a whole bunch of people to shoot all at once at another group of people. And you might hit somebody.
Yes.
With rifles, you could actually take accurate shots.
Yeah.
At your enemy, and they were more likely to get hit at further ranges. And
yeah. So like as a here's the little gun club corner.
Well, it winds up being important for the story.
It's important for the story. It's so long and short is that the weapons that they use are not muskets, they're rifles because the barrels of them are the word rifle comes from the rifling, which is it's cuts in the barrels that it's a spiral formation that actually makes the bullet is another term that gets whatever, but like the piece of lead that's supposed to go into somebody else's body.
Projectile.
Yes, the projectile gets spun in a way that allows it to move straighter through air.
Yes.
And so
it's also more compact because with a smoothbore musket and just a regular musket ball, you can basically just drop the ball down the barrel of the gun and it would get to the bottom because it was just looser tolerances. But with a rifle, everything had to be tight, so you could actually get contact with the rifle. With the rifling for the bullet to spin. And
so British Army had these rifle regiments. Most other armies did not, but they were never supposed to go out and do like if you imagine the traditional Revolutionary Wars like period of like everybody stands in a line and shoots at each other. Mm-hmm. These guys, that was not their job. Their job was to be like up in the hills somewhere or like
off to the side
and just pick away at people from a further distance, because when you have a rifle, you can actually shoot from a further distance more accurately.
I would imagine all of the other armies of the continent thought that was unsporting.
Oh yeah, because
that's the terms that they talked about this shit.
Yeah,
with
it was not the conduct of a gentleman. Mm-hmm. And so
cheating. You're cheating at war.
Yes, you're cheating at war. Oh my god. And so of that group of skilled marksmen, we have the sharpshooters and the chosen men, and those guys are the best of the best of the best, sir, of the
with honors
of the riflemen.
So Sharpe is basically in charge of a Napoleonic War era special forces team.
Yes. So that's kind of like his whole arc, and eventually he ends up as a colonel, and he ends up in charge of like a whole group of riflemen regiment and stuff. But this is the core group that he stays with, and they are with him throughout the entirety of the Napoleonic Wars, and even some of them actually come back for Napoleon's second round. So this is another Napoleonic Wars thing.
Yeah,
they defeated him first. They exiled him to one place.
It wasn't Sicily. It was the other
Elba.
Yeah,
I can't remember whether it was
Corsica.
the first or second time.
First time they sent him to Corsica.
Well, he's from
they sent him back to Corsica.
And so he came back,
I think,
took over one of the Louis.
Yeah.
And then for a couple of months wreaked havoc on Europe again. And that's the portion that the Battle of Waterloo comes from.
Yeah.
So, but even throughout this entire period of like 15, 20 years, is this group of guys stays with Sharpe. And that's ultimately the heart of the series, of just like specifically him and Harper, but him, Harper, Harris, Hagman, like all these dudes that are with him for the whole way and like become more than friends, of just like dudes that have shared everything with each other together. Yeah. And that's the component that draws me to it, I think, more than anything else.
Well, and I mean, one way that this one illustrates their not even camaraderie, but like closeness and how they work together as a team, especially in the ending fight during the dumbest cavalry charge I've ever seen put to film, where a bunch of French cavalrymen ride into
a
town square and just get stuck. But they're always covering each other's backs. You know, there's always a French cavalryman riding towards one of them with a saber, getting ready to cut him down, and another chosen man, right there to shoot that guy off of his horse. And through working together like that, they.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And something too is said for the fact of like Sharpe is coming. He's risen through the ranks. He's just a bastard from Yorkshire, and his best friend is an Irishman, which is kind of a thing in that period of time in the army or in Britain in general.
Yeah,
because the Irish, but
yeah.
There's a little bit, there's some light racism against the Irish in this one. It gets hardcore in a couple of the episodes that follow.
I know his name is Patrick, but every time they call him Patty, my Irish hackles come up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very far away from the era in which the Irish were just seriously discriminated against, but like there's still a little something in me, especially as an Irish Catholic, that gets my hackles up.
So it's these two underdog dudes who do good, to a degree in an otherwise difficult time to be able to do any good.
Yeah. Well, and there's and it's also one of those things where it's like they're successful at fighting the Napoleonic War. Just like there is a certain sort of quality of like doom to that. Not doom, but sort of like. I mean, if you're gonna be good at something, be good at something. But did it have to be this? Did it have to be something this stupid?
Yeah, Which is and that's the general broad arc of the series of just like war is stupid.
Yeah.
and it but it does it in a way that doesn't make it as I guess depressing and soul crushing as it otherwise would be in reality.
Yeah, well, because it oftentimes in movies, to which the theme is war is stupid, many of the soldiers and the people involved in the war also get portrayed as victims.
Yeah,
of that stupidity. And there is certainly some of that, but all of the characters that we like know by name, people that we see over and over again, there's a lot of like nameless slaughter of anonymous soldiers going on, but all of our people that we keep track of, in at least in the Sharpe, have dignity to what they're doing. You know, like there's a like they said with Harper. There is an aspect of like they want to be here. They signed up for this. This is what they would prefer to be doing. And also just like, you know, just by being good at their jobs, there is a dignity to participating in something as like stupid and futile as European land war in the 19th century.
Death to the French.
Death to the French.
Death to the French.
Why do you not drink?
I never liked that toast, Major. I am a soldier, not an assassin.
Ultimately, like I said, it is definitely a show that is about like just a group of people who are working together for a common goal, who become comrades. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And I am generally tickled to death by a lot of their exploits, because it is to a degree also the army version of Horatio Hornblower, which is its own thing. And so like Horatio Hornblower is the series of it's another series of novels that was also turned into a BBC series of just like captain of a ship in the Royal Navy, and just like, here's our adventures and here are the things we're doing, and just like, I'm a good guy who believes in doing good things, and we're in a terrible situation, but we're going to make the best of it. And I think that that's the core concept of it all.
Yeah.
Sharpe is a little bit more, is a little bit grittier, I think, because Horatio Hornblower is more of a gentleman officer type of deal.
Yeah.
But so Sharpe has some rougher edges to him, but ultimately, like, he at least always does what he thinks is the right thing to do.
Yes.
So that's the important. That's the core of it, and that's what makes him a protagonist.
Sometimes he has to try a few other options first.
Oh God, yeah. And he oftentimes will do the dumb thing first, and it costs either him or people that he cares about.
Yeah,
but that's, you know, otherwise there's no fucking story to tell. So, like, sorry, you know,
that's how you learn stuff.
Yeah. God.
We've been running this episode in silent in the background, and we just got to I think both our favorite shot of the whole thing.
It's up there,
where Brian Cox slowly opens a door and peeks from behind it,
and we're trying to figure out why that's not a reaction GIF.
It's gonna be short. It's gonna be soon.
Yeah. And oh God. But and that's the other thing that I think that I appreciate too about the series is that it's as we will term it low budget, because like obviously you can't have giant armies fighting at each other and stuff like that, but like from a technical perspective, like it's pretty damn well shot.
Yeah.
It's not ugly.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. Most of the time in that sort of like
war movie way.
Well, like that 90s period drama war movie way. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know, we're looking at sequences now where there's like, you know, the prime suspects are in focus. That, you know, oh, here comes the money shot.
Oh,
sorry, this is the point where
boink.
Oh,
it's so dumb.
Harper just shot the guy with his ramrod. Yeah,
it's so dumb.
Yeah, but you know what? we were also talking about the element of like, doesn't matter if it's dumb, if it's cool.
If it's cool. That's the other thing with this show. It's fun.
Yeah.
That's something an element that could have very easily gotten lost in how.
Oh God, yeah.
Like if this show was made today, it would be like super gritty, and like down and dirty, and be mostly mud, and it would be, you know, like the state of the officers treating the enlisted men like shit would just be the entire run of the show.
Yeah,
you know.
It's
the one good officer would be Sharpe, because
of course,
you know, he's a man from the streets, and he's been risen above his station, and he has solidarity with these men. You can't just scream at them and beat the shit out of them and get them to do what you want them to do. You have to treat them like humans, and it would be flatter.
Yeah,
flatter. That's so much of what is made now is just flatter.
Yeah.
You know?
At least, yeah, visually and story-wise, it's just kind of like everything is just right here on the front.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And with this, I think, yes, it's obviously a dramatized version of the Napoleonic Wars, and there's a little bit of like cavalier, artistic license being taken about the way people behave. But ultimately, it's done in the service of telling a compelling story that is interesting and keeps your attention for the 90 minutes that it's on, which is, I think that there's an important part of it. You shouldn't always be stuck to trying to be just as real as possible.
Yeah.
Because we've had that problem with Game of Thrones where it's there's this battle that takes place at night and nobody can see anything because everything's lit by fire. It's like, motherfucker, there's dragons in this show. Like, it's fine if there's a key light.
Yeah.
We're gonna be okay. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like we're cool. And just like, it's okay if you heighten the reality a little bit. That's the point of these types of stories. You're still getting across the stuff that you want to get across thematically. It's just do it in a creative way. You know, it's the line, sort of a semi-related thing of the comedian Chris Titus talking about like, trying to exercise their pain and stuff. He's like, tell me about your pain. Just put it in joke form, right? just do it in a way that's a little bit palatable, and we can come to an understanding. And like, there's a way to do it. That's why I like Star Trek, of just like couching the lesson in a little bit of fun story, whiz bang metaphor.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, then we're just fucking sitting in church reading the Bible, and that's no fun for anybody.
Yeah. Or you're watching a documentary.
Yeah, or I'm watching news, PBS Frontline.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I can do, and I appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, there's a time and a place, but
But for this,
fun is good.
Yeah,
and Sharpe is good because it is fun.
Yes, and I think is part of it is like it's fun, and it also talks about a lot of the shit that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's just like the weird stratification of class during this period of time, and just like how shitty war is.
Yeah,
and all of that stuff is still covered, but it's fun to watch, and so you can still get the message and not feel exhausted by the end of the show.
Right, and have had a good time.
Yes,
while watching it.
Yeah, because it's the problem. I mean, and I'm going to compare Sharpe to Saving Private Ryan, but oh man,
listen, we have 15 more of these. It's going to happen. Get it out of your system early.
I understand and I appreciate Saving Private Ryan. I think it's a well-made film. I have seen it several times. I understand all of it. You can throw all of the laurels on it that you want. I don't know if I will ever watch it again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Especially as now that I have gotten older.
Yeah.
I understand that some of the themes that are put forward in that film are important for people to grasp, and that they are driven home in a very specific, very visceral way.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's room for discussing those themes in a more technicolor, maybe too strong of a word, but in a technicolor space, kind of the way that it is with Sharpe.
Yeah. I mean, if Saving Private Ryan had happened once and it was a singular example of a thing,
yeah,
I think I think we would be better off. I think a lot of what you're talking about is the ways in which Hollywood and filmmakers learned a lot of the wrong lessons from Saving Private Ryan and kept on trying to replicate it, and missing a lot of the finer details. That happens with Spielberg a lot, because he'll do something that's never been done before. I mean, at that point, Saving Private Ryan, there was nothing like Saving Private Ryan before it.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of shit exactly like not a lot of stuff that's not nearly as good.
Yeah.
Trying to do similar things after Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
But this is not the Saving Private Ryan show. This is the Sharpe offshoot of No Flicks Given. We're gonna have to come up with a cheeky.
It's got to be
series name.
Yeah, it's got to be Sharpe something.
Yeah,
I just haven't come up with it yet.
Well, if you have any ideas, send us an email. I think we have an email. Find us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Before
Don LaFontaine will tell you about it at the end of the thing.
Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts on Sharpe's Rifles, the film? Because we did spend a lot of time setting our audience up for the rest of the series, talking about Sharpe as a property. But
I think in summation, it does feel a little bit like a pilot for a TV show to a degree, where they're still trying to find their footing and they're trying to introduce the audience to characters that we are eventually going to come to love.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you go into watching it with that lens, you're cool. I think where we went wrong was we were getting fed all of the later period YouTube clips, and we're like, we're going to get that from Go, right?
Yeah.
And in very British fashion, they're like, no, you have to eat your vegetables first.
Well, here's a question. Do you think, because you've seen all the movies, should people maybe watch Sharpe's Eagle, which is the one coming up next, and maybe a few more, and then come back to this one?
Honestly, I that might be. I think honestly, start with Sharpe's Eagle, and I think if you like Sharpe's Eagle, you can come back to Sharpe's Rifles and understand where the characters are coming from that appear in Sharpe's Eagle. But Sharpe's Eagles can be is to my opinion. We can talk about it when we get to it. But just like on its own is just a fun, great film.
Cool.
Just a great movie. So I can't wait to talk about that one. But this one also is totally worth watching. Like I said, just set your expectations.
Yes. Well, the entire Sharpe series is available for free with Spanish subtitles. On YouTube on a random dude's page. So just put Sharpe's Rifles into the YouTube search bar, and it'll be there. No commercials because it's a
because it's committing copyright fraud.
Yeah. And I believe it's also on BritBox. I have to double check, but I know for a fact it's on YouTube for free. So check that out.
Yeah.
Not sure when the next one of these is going to come out, but Matt and I have committed to watching the whole series and discussing it. If you have thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Don LaFontaine has the information at the end, and there will be several other familiar voices will be joining us.
Oh, sure.
As we go. So, thank you guys for listening.
Tora Castro. Sorry, it just came up on the subtitles and I couldn't resist saying it.
Matt, thank you for doing this with me. This is fun.
This is the first in-person recording we've had in quite some time.
Oh my God. Oh, Jesus. Wow, I have to go process that.
Yeah. Bye.
If I should fall to rise no more, as many comrades did before, then ask the fifes and drums to play over the hills and far away, o'er the hills and o'er the main, through Flanders, Portugal and Spain. George commands and we obey, over the hills and far away. Then
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at No Flicks Given Podcast. See you next time.
Tora Castro, Casa Antigua to Lisbon.